Ko amar Adonai, thus says God, Hanoten bayam derech uvemayim azim netiva, who made a road through the sea and a path through mighty waters, who destroyed chariots and horses and all the mighty host. They lay down to rise no more. They were extinguished, quenched like a wick. Do not recall what happened of old, or ponder what happened of yore. Hineni oseh chadasha. Behold, I am about to do something new. Ata titzmach. It will happen soon and now. Halo teda'uha. You shall perceive it suddenly. Af asim bamidbar derech. I will make a road through the wilderness. Bishimon neharot. And rivers in the dry desert. This is the prophecy of Isaiah, the 43rd chapter, spoken to our ancestors during the time of the Babylonian exile, when the people were feeling hopeless and defeated. Isaiah provides a message of encouragement and consolation. He says, we've been here before. We've been through the bondage of Egypt. We face certain death at the shores of the sea. Do not dwell on the disappointments of the past and what happened in the past. Don't be gripped with fear and anxiety. Envision, he says, even radically, what a better future, what a salvation might look like, and have faith that it will come to pass. The beauty of studying the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, is that you're never just reading a book of history. You're reading a book designed to guide you and center you through the trials of contemporary life as well. In the Babylonian exile, as in today, Isaiah reminds us that fortunes can change instantly. To dwell on the past and believe that things can never change is a form of rebellion against God. God, who made a path through the mighty waters, can in a flash restore his people to Zion. This is a nuanced message because inasmuch as redemption is important in Judaism, so is memory. That was the theme of last week's Shabbat. It's called Shabbat Zachor. We're called to remember and acknowledge our pain, to say that it was real, to believe that it happened, to admit that that pain changed us. But this week is Shabbat Parah. It's not about looking back. On Shabbat Parah, you look forward. You look forward to Pesach, our feast of deliverance and redemption. The message this week is one of healing, of changing the future, of being aware that God can help us move forward from our pain and do new things in our lives. And I would submit to you that the tension between Shabbat Zachor and Shabbat Parah, between the past and the future, is really essential for our progress and essential for us Jews in the way we look at our future as a people. We have to confront especially phenomena in our landscape which might overemphasize past hurts and underemphasize our ability to move beyond them. That's why I want to bring to your attention and ask us to consider a major bone of contention in this Hamas-Israel war, and that is the funding of a United Nations agency called UNRWA, the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees. As many of you know, a few weeks ago it was brought to light, clearly and indisputably, that UNRWA employees were actively involved in the October 7th massacre. The evidence included video footage of an UNRWA social worker and another Hamas terrorist picking up the bodies of dead Israelis near Kibbutz Be'eri. It included another video of an UNRWA teacher boasting of his involvement in the attacks. And it included footage of a terror tunnel network right underneath the UNRWA headquarters in Gaza. According to the IDF, there are approximately 450 UNRWA employees who are also, right now, military operatives in Gaza. Almost immediately upon the release of the evidence, 14 donor nations, including the United States and Canada, suspended funding the agency. The statement from Global Affairs Canada, one of the worst parts of Canadian bureaucracy, was that Canada will not disperse funds to UNRWA until the conclusion of an investigation into the Israeli allegations. Don't you think that was the correct move and the right thing to do? I thought we lived in a country that did not want our tax dollars supporting terrorism. But we found out all too soon that Canada's Minister of International Development, Ahmed Hussein, who was also, by the way, involved in the government's scandalous funding of known anti-Semite Laith Marouf, reversed the decision before any investigation had been concluded. He reinstated funding. Prior, Canada did not miss a single payment to UNRWA. Let this sink in for a second. As horrible as the October 7th massacres were, our tax dollars helped fund it. It leaves me, for one, feeling gross. And our tax dollars helped fund it by subsidizing textbooks that teach hate and paying for hospitals where we found out they're hospitals / Hamas terror bases. It makes me sick. Since all this happened last month, the UN at its highest levels has been out on a counter-campaign against the United States and Israel, their counter-campaign to defend UNRWA. Just this week, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, visited Jordan for that purpose, and he issued a statement saying that UNRWA is doing wonderful work and giving vital support to the Palestinian people. Israel retorted that since January, UNRWA has only fired 12 of its employees, and that they have evidence now that some 1,200 have direct ties to terrorism. The position of the Jewish community should be clear. I'm sure UNRWA does a lot of good work, just like I'm sure ISIS did a lot of good work. And just like ISIS was brought down and defeated, UNRWA should be brought down and defeated. Our case against UNRWA isn't just because it is corrupt and because of its links to terror. What's really at stake here is something much bigger. It's about whether the world wants to invest in agencies designed to perpetuate past conflicts or in those that seek to solve them. Israelis look at Palestinians and see a people who are intelligent and talented, but have made some terrible decisions with regard to their self-governance and the particularly terrible decision of investing in the killing of Jews rather than the development of their own people. Palestinians look at themselves and see victims of occupation, colonialism, and white supremacy. They justify their violent acts of resistance because the society in which they are trying to compete is, in their words, irredeemably racist against them and invested in their suffering. This conflict of narratives may sound simplistic, but in my opinion, it really is the essence of this conflict. We think the 1948 War of Independence has ended. But has it really ended if the chief aid organization for Palestinians insists that the recipients of its aid are 75 years later still refugees? UNRWA labels the people it serves with a stamp of victimhood and deludes them into believing that they are entitled to some right of return. And lest we think that the right of return is an innocent idea of just feelings of nostalgia to a home that belonged to a great-grandparent in Tel Aviv, October 7th is what the right of return looks like, friends. That is the right of return. October 7th is the realization of the Palestinian vision of return. The right of return was never an innocent idea. It always had the element of a violent, brutal triumphalism over the Jewish state. And UNRWA has been supporting that narrative for 75 years. And so even if UNRWA purges the terrorism from within its ranks, it is still unworthy of international support. Aid must go to Palestinians. Don't get me wrong. Aid should go to needy people throughout the world. And you may not know this, but Israel provides more aid to Gaza than UNRWA does now and has ever done, including water, electricity, and vital medical supplies. But if the world was genuinely interested in peace, it would fund and incentivize people who are taken off of UNRWA's rosters, those who are ready to make a new future for themselves, who are ready to move on and consent that 75 years later they possess no right of return anymore. Einat Wilf, a former MK who's just brilliant, she made an interesting observation that October 7th should put an end to the notion of the, quote, poor Palestinians who constantly need aid, money, and support. The Palestinians are a highly capable people. October 7th required years of planning, massive investment in infrastructure, strategy, discipline, vision, a perverse vision, but vision. The Palestinians are not an incapable people. They just have terrible priorities. For a century, they decided to devote all their substantial capabilities not to building something for themselves for the future, but to destroy the Jewish state. And as long as this is their ideology, anyone who gives them any kind of funding or aid or legitimacy should not be surprised. You're basically guaranteed that your funding will be funneled to the destruction of the Jewish state and to continued war. The Parsha that we read this morning taught that each and every morning, the first order of the day in the Holy Temple was for the Kohen, the priest, to remove yesterday's ashes from the altar. The ashes are not allowed to collect and accrue. A new day cannot begin until yesterday's ashes are removed. But this law isn't just about temple service. It underscores, I think, a fundamental truth in the service of God and for life in general. Ashes are what is left over from the previous day's service. Yesterday, your service may have been perfect or imperfect. It doesn't matter. What matters is that yesterday's service was yesterday's service, and today begins a new day. Do not recall what happened of old, or ponder what happened of yore. I am about to do something new. Even now it shall come to pass. Of any people in the world, I would venture to say that we Jews could collect, if we wanted to, more of yesterday's ashes than anyone else. Our history, Jewish history, is filled with stories of brutality and persecution, degradation and enslavement. Our people burned on altars. But for the sake of peace and for the sake of a better future, time and time again, we've put those terrible traumas behind us in the hopes and in the desire to build a better future. The large windows at the end of the Yad Vashem Museum in Jerusalem do not overlook military installations so that we can stir up feelings of violent revenge. Instead, they overlook communities and schools and apartment buildings and construction cranes rising over the largest city in the Jewish state. And today, Germany is one of Israel's biggest trading partners. Things really can change on a dime. The Torah asks us to follow that path as a people, and it asks us to do that personally as well on Shabbat Parah, to purify ourselves from the ways we've been sullied in the past and to look forward to a better future. And we broadcast that message out to the nations of the world and to the United Nations too. If you really want peace, don't support the collectors of the ashes of yesterday's wars. Stop collecting them. Support those who are more invested in tomorrow. Support those who are ready to build new accommodations for a shared and prosperous future. May we be privileged to behold the day when for Jews and Palestinians, roads will be made through the wilderness and rivers in the dry desert. Shabbat Shalom.